Viewers, is it time to lower the age of consent for sexual activity in India? We're asking you this today on a day when there's a raging debate after senior advocate Indira Jaising has filed a petition in the Supreme Court demanding the age of consent to be lowered from 18 to 16 under the POCSO Act, arguing that it unfairly criminalizes consensual adolescent relationships. Now, the centre has opposed the change, emphasizing protections against exploitation and child marriage. Let's first take you through the history of age of consent in India and why the petition has come up now. Before 2012, the age of consent was fixed at 16 years for females. After 2012, the POCSO Act introduced and comes into play. Now, this is, of course, where, while before 2012, there was no specific age of consent defined for males, after 2012, it has defined the age of consent for all at 18 years specifically. Now, also the larger question is that before 2012, it fixed as per section IPC section 375, which defines rape. There's also the question after 2012, which defines age of consent for all now at 18 years. So that's the difference as far as the law before 2012 and after that is concerned. Now we've seen senior advocate Indira Jaising has demanded that this restriction in the POCSO Act be lowered. And here are the reasons that have been cited by her in her petition. The first argument is that the law criminalizes relationships among adolescents. The second is that the law violates constitutional rights of adolescents. She goes on to argue that there is no rational reason to increase the age of consent from 16 to 18. The other argument is that the data indicates sexual activity amongst teens is not uncommon. The fifth argument, criminalizing sex between teenagers is unconstitutional. These are some of the arguments that have been put forth. Meanwhile, the centre has opposed this petition and has cited the possibilities of multiple risks to adolescents. The first is that it increases the risk of trafficking and abuse. The second is that the move dilutes child protection laws. The third is that it increases exploitation under the garb of assent. The fourth is that this would dilute statutory presumption of vulnerability. But what is the precedent across the world, and is India in that sense alone? Let's tell you what the age of consent is in many countries across the world. In Europe, in United Kingdom, it is 16. In France, it is 15. In Netherlands, 15. And Belgium, it's at 15. These are just some of the countries. Of course, there are variations within continents as well. In North America, Canada, it is at 16. In US, it is 16 to 18, and it's decided by individual states. In South Korea and Asia, it is at 16. In Turkey, it is at 18. Also, of course, if you look at the Gulf nations, for instance, sexual activity is prohibited outside of marriage, but there are exceptions in certain countries which allow for judicial and other precedents to allow for marriage between those who are below a certain age as well. Let's quickly open this up to our guests now and listen into some of the reactions coming in before we go across to our guests.
So when you have children from 16 to 18 who are engaging in this sort of behavior with each other, the boy, say 17, would be criminalized and would go into the juvenile justice system and potentially with a penalty of 3 years, right? If it is the girl, thankfully nothing would happen to her, but the boy would be criminalized at that age. And this is something I think that is a real problem.
Almost 50% of these cases in POCSO are cases where the sexual activity is consensual. If you see across the world, there is a concept of Romeo and Juliet clause, which is in the United States, where exactly the same situation has been contemplated, and they have said that they should be treated as an exception, where these young children who are in their 60s, 16, 17 and 18 years of age, where there's the age gap between the accused and the prosecutor, which is not too much, about 3 to 4 years. There they said that it is not an offence of rape.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 2 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, Dr. Anand Ranganathan continues from debate number 1, but joining us on the show now are Swati Goel Sharma, who's the managing editor of Rashtra Jyoti. We also have with us Abha Singh, lawyer and activist, Karuna Nundy is senior advocate in the Supreme Court. Let me start with you first. Swati Goel Sharma, I'm going to read out what the court has said in a different matter, but it deals with the issue of, young romance. This is what the justice in this particular case, Justice B.V. Nagratna, has observed. They have gone on to say that enforcement agencies should go slow. In love affairs amongst teenagers, POCSO should not be invoked mechanically. Police must apply their mind. Discretion can be exercised case by case. So perhaps she has also argued the need for, misuse of this law to not take place. And there's a lot of data which suggests that there are, those between the age 16 to 18 who are being dragged into the legal process, which at that age can have a huge amount of consequence as far as individuals are concerned. Swati Goel Sharma.
Sure. If you do not see, there is a provision in the law, which is Juvenile Justice Act, which is already there to prevent, as you said, penalization of children. Criminalization of sex by 17-year-olds, that is already there, so that has to be implemented. But that doesn't mean you lower the age of consent to 16. See, if this 17-year-old boy, if it's not about 16 and 18, right, he can also have sex with like a girl, let's say 15 years and 9 months of age, 10 months of age. Then he's also, where do we draw the line? Why only 16? Then you can actually keep going down and say the consensual sex can also happen between 15 and 17-year-old or 14 and 17-year-old. See, there are a lot of cases in which the girl is actually 15. I can tell you of a case in Delhi 3 years ago in which the girl was 15, she was pregnant, she gave birth to a baby, and then the case went to the court, and the judge said, because we can't punish the baby, so let the boy who was 20 live as husband and wife with the girl. So these are the kind of cases we are going to see if we allow it. If we are actually going by the logic of argument of consent, then consensual, sex can happen between 14, 15, year-old with a slightly older man. And if a 17-year-old child can be so mindful as to not have sex with a girl who is less than 16 years old age, then why can't he stop at actually 18? That is the whole argument.
Okay, let me bring in Abha Singh. There are 2-3 very important points that you have raised. Abha Singh, how do you know the correct and the most optimum age for the age of consent? If it's 16, why not 15? If it's 15, why not 14? And the problem is that global jurisprudence, there are different standards. Of course, one can argue that there is a need to perhaps lower the age and perhaps there existed a different precedent. But what do you do in cases such as this? And she has cited an example where a child was born. Now, if the boy, for instance, is 17, that boy cannot legally marry until the time he's 21. And who's to say what's to happen within that period of, 4 years? How do you answer these complex questions, Abha Singh?
Madhav, if you see, even today in India, 4,400 child marriages take place every day, even though you have a law that marrying a girl less than 18 is an offense. So you have to see the country, how it has been. You yourself have shown the figures that till 2012, age of consent was 16 years. Justice Verma, after Nirbhaya, when the commission was set up, said, let us not make the difference. Let's not change from 16 to 18. So in India, world over, it is seen that puberty is at 14. And I think from there, biologically, a woman is ready to become a mother. And that is why maybe 14, 15 was the time, was the age where majority of the girls got married. And in India, particularly, if you see on Akshay Tritiya, so many girls get married. So let us not go by this thing that if it is 16, why not 15, why not 14? Majority of cases, this adult romances are in the age of 16 to 18. If you see the NCRB figures, maximum of the boys who have faced rape charges are in the age of 17, 18, because that is the time the issues like this are coming up. So that is why it is a reasoned decision, which now the lawyers are saying they are trying to compel the court. In fact, Kerala High Court recently quashed a POCSO case where this type of case was that the boy was 17 and the girl was 16. Because none of the courts, couple of high courts have raised this issue and they said we cannot criminalize teenage romance. So I think let us not just dilute by saying what 14, what 15, at least 16 to 18, because maximum cases come during that period. And it was earlier 16. So the logic is, let us come to that. Even if you see juvenile cases where a juvenile rapes a girl or a woman and the juvenile is in the age of 16 to 18, we are ready to try him under the IPC. By the same logic that he may be young, but he is not so young and he can commit a heinous offense, let him be tried by IPC. So
Okay.
I think lowering it to 16 would ensure that a lot of innocent boys who are put behind bars for being called rapists, these girls turn hostile under the pressure of their parents. They voluntarily elope with them. You know, these are the 16, 17 who elope. I'm sure a 10 or 12-year-old girl percentage would not be even 5%.
Okay, let me cite the statistics. Let me cite the statistics and the argument that you're making. And Dr. Ranganathan, I want you to just respond to this. This is the NCRB data from 2018 to 2022, which has shown that arrests of juveniles between 16 to 18 under POXO have risen by 31%. However, the conviction rate remains at barely 11%. So are we over-criminalizing young people rather than protecting effectively the real victims of sexual abuse? Dr. Ranganathan.
Thank you, Madhav, and good evening to my fellow panelists. This is a very serious issue. Please allow me a couple of minutes, because can I say that I'm a little disappointed why everyone's considering this as a legal issue, social issue, cultural issue. I'm sorry, it's none of those. It's a purely scientific issue. This is a matter of health and science, and society and culture cannot come into it. It's a bit like deciding the date of abortion, the limit of abortion. Now, in America, some consider it as a religious issue, cultural issue. I'm sorry. In India, I'm proud that the date set for abortion is decided purely on scientific basis. Same goes for infant vaccination. Same goes for, you have the contraception. What if we were to tomorrow listen to what some members of society think about vaccinating or not vaccinating children? It would be calamitous for the infectious diseases spread in this country. So please, we look at science, and I'm sorry, I'm not just disappointed. I am... Now, please, Abaji, please, I did not interrupt you, please.
Okay, let him make his point. He's making his opening comments. We can get into the debate in just a moment, and Karuna Nundy has not spoken as yet as well.
Yes,
Dr. Ranganathan.
I'll just finish in about a minute. Look, I'm not just disappointed, I'm appalled by the puerile statements and advocacy made by Indira Jaising. Just three of her advocacies. Number one, she says puberty is being arrived at early. By that logic, if children achieve puberty at 9, should we be okay with them having sex? Then she says children are entering romantic relationships early. By that logic, if you give consent to kids at 10, at their romantic, should that be all right? And the most troubling, she says, this has led to an increase in POXO cases. By that logic, should we decriminalize marijuana or cocaine use and reduce the conviction because of drug use? This is a matter of science. It has to be decided by science. Now, what does science say? For example, the most scientifically aware and respecting state in California has a legal age of 18. You mentioned Belgium and France at 15, but California is 18. Why? Because the mental and physical faculties of the human body, decidedly the woman's body, are not yet ready at 16 as they are at 18. You have plenty of studies done on neurodevelopmental studies that are done, especially prefrontal cortex. You have so many things are not as ready at 16 as they are at 18. You have emotional distress leading to consent when it's given at 16. You have more teenage pregnancies. You have prevalence of STD. You have less condom use. In mental faculties, you can run haywire if you're not careful. So please, this is not a cultural or a societal issue at all. Treat this as science, not Sharia.
All right, Karuna Nundy, treat this as science. There's a scientific reason, and perhaps, to some extent, Dr. Ranganathan has a point. The legal age for marriage is fixed at 18 with certain principles in mind. And let me also ask you what the centre has said. The centre has said specifically that this will open floodgates to trafficking and abuse under the garb of consent. The larger issues of child marriage, trafficking and exploitation, which are real issues in India, should we tackle them first before actually trying to change the law? That's a question that comes to mind, given what the centre has stated. Karuna Nundy.
What the centre has stated with regard to trafficking is not hugely relevant, because there is a separate law on trafficking. There's a slew of separate laws on trafficking, and trafficking involves coercion, forced sex, and in fact, enabling prostitution. So it's a completely different thing. Let's be clear about that. Number two, one of the previous panelists said that this is a matter of science, very vociferously may I add, that this is a matter of science and not a matter of law. It is a law, so it is a matter of law. Let's be clear about that. The law, in fact, prior to the amendment in 2012, was 16 for many, many, many decades. Now, there are national family health surveys that see whether teenage sexuality between adolescents of 16 and 18, whether it went down or not, and the evidence is actually not clear, that it went both ways. So the main argument here is that increasing or keeping that increase from 2012, from 16 to 18, is something that is going to deter behavior in adolescents having sex. The evidence is absolutely unclear about that. So what is this provision? Is it the age of consent? No. What it in fact is the age of criminalization of otherwise consensual sex between adolescents of 16 to 18. Right? Now take a situation where your daughter or your niece or some child that you are fond of comes and says, you know, Papa, this is something that happened. I really regret it. I don't want it to happen again. And I know that you taught me well, and I know that you taught me not to engage in sexuality because I would not be ready. I know that my school has taught me this, and I know that the government has been running campaigns to ensure that this is behavior, because it is risky behavior. It's not good for children, you know, but I did it. And I really, really regret it, and I'm never going to do it again. Do you know what the legal consequence of this would be? The person, the father, or the mother, or any person who knows about it, would mandatorily have to go and report this to the police. And you know who would be criminalized? The girl and the boy. Now, it is true that girls normally are let off. Even though under POCSO, both the girls and the boy would be criminalized. They would both be victims, they would both be criminals. But do you want that child to go to jail? I mean, to go to a child's home for this, a juvenile home for this? And do you know what those homes look like? And to the extent to which, how that destroys a person's life? So the same people, in this kind of abstract drawing room fashion, are arguing, are completely in ignorance of how the law in fact works.
Okay.
So let us be clear that there are ways to do this. There are ways to say that if there is an age difference, for example, of more than 3 years, if the person is over 16, is 16 or over. If they're under 16, maybe an age difference of 2 years. This is what we call the Romeo and Juliet clause. Right. Only then will it not be considered.
Fair point.
If there is no fraud, coercion, and other force, so there are protections that can be built in.
Yes, purely for consensual such relationships, Dr. Ranganathan, and the point that is being made is that there is a global precedence of a Romeo and Juliet law, and I've read out, and in fact there's a much longer list, in fact it's just for paucity of time. Globally, most countries have it at 16 or 15, some are even lower, but at least that protects these youngsters, teenagers, from falling into the clutches of the legal system. And that has its own set of consequences, as we've been arguing.
Now,
Dr.
I ask a very simple logical question. Let's not go by anecdotal things or create stories around things of 1 or 2 instances. What prevents the age of consent to being 12? Is it not science? It's a simple question. Whatever prevents it from being 12 is preventing it from being 16. Now, you can argue what is the actual age, but what I mean to say is that has to be decided by science, not by society or anecdotal evidence that Papa bura maan gaye, jail jayenge. No, it has to be decided by science. If it is not to be decided by science, then let us accept that puberty is arrived at early and 2 kids consent to have sex at 9. Are you fine with that? Yes or no?
And I will ask this. Karuna Nundy, I want you to answer that question. Also, add one small statistic. Already in our country, girls between the, yes, I'm coming to you. Already girls between the ages of 15 to 19, there are 6.8% who are already mothers or pregnant. Now, this is as far as the NFHS 5 data is concerned. Shouldn't we be focusing on trying to reduce this percentage? Perhaps by better education, sex education, so on and so forth. Perhaps that's an area that we should be focusing more on. Karuna Nundy.
With regard to what you said, I am in 100% agreement. I think increasing the age of motherhood is vital. Increasing the age of that people engage, that adolescents engage in sexual activity, I think is very important. However, let me educate my friend on Mr. Ranganathan, Anand Ranganathan, on the science. It is absolutely clear. Neurobiologists, and this is not your area, I know, but neurobiologists have said that it is until the age of 25. The brain is plastic.
Okay, let's not make personal comments. We have limited time.
Right?
Allow Karuna Nundy.
So therefore,
please, yeah, okay, once again, please allow me to conduct the debate. Karuna Nundy, we have very limited time. I'm requesting you to quickly conclude your arguments in about 45 seconds, please.
Please don't interrupt me. Let me finish. So the brain is plastic until the age of 25. This is the reason that it is the age of juvenile justice, the age until which the Juvenile Justice Act kicks in, was meant to be 18, but that was reduced. You know, so you won't find the same group of people saying that juveniles should be let off because their brains are not sufficiently developed to be criminalized. And therefore, the arguments that they have are destructive to each other, right? Because on the one hand, you're saying that you don't really know what you're doing, and on the other hand, you're saying you should be criminalized.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, completely out of time. I'm sorry, I'm totally out of time.
I have a question to the other panelists. If the lowering of age of consent is all about saving that 17-year-old child.
Swati, I'm sorry I'm intervening because we're completely out of time. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, Swati Kol Sharma, Abha Singh, Karuna Nundy, would have loved to have a much longer discussion on this because there are so many complexities, so many issues involved and many real points of debate, but it's ultimately going to be in the Supreme Court where this is going to be decided, and we'll have to look at what the outcome of the court in this case will be. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.